Okay, hi everybody. Welcome. It's Wednesday evening. I was supposed to have a baby, and I know it's a little bit crazy here in the New York area. I'm from the New York area, and we just had this big hurricane that whipped through the area, and there are so many of you that don't have power tonight. So I am thinking of all of you and hoping that all of you are doing well and surviving this incredible heat wave and the uncertainty of not knowing when you're going to get your power back. I also lost power last evening for about 20 some odd hours, but thank God power is back on, and I'm thrilled to be here and to be able to bring you Sora Ruchel from Infertility Acceptability. I'm going to wait for her to come on here, but she's one of those people who everyone had told me that this was someone that I should reach out to, that there was a real clamoring to speak to her because she was one of the first accounts on social media to speak about infertility from the Jewish perspective. And really her bravery and her willingness to talk about this is something that we all have benefited from. And so I am just thrilled to have her here. I am waiting for her to come on. Let me see if I can grab her. 1 second. Hold on, guys. Oh, wait, I just saw her. She just joined. So we're all good. So she's going to be coming on in a second. Here we go. Here we go. Love when technology works. It's so much fun. Hold on 1 second. Here she's coming.
Hey.
Hi, and there she is. As we both adjust.
I know. My head is chopped off. There we go.
Yes, exactly. Head, bottom, whatever it is.
Yes.
I
got all nervous. I thought my internet wasn't working for a minute, but it's good.
I was going to say, well, welcome to the wonders of technology. Here we are.
I know.
Here we are. So
it's never perfect.
Never perfect, but it's working tonight. Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. So, Ruchel, I just gave everyone a little snippet of a background. So many people who are here already know you because of your presence here, but
right.
Please introduce yourself and then we'll just launch right into it.
All right. My name is Belsky, and I had started a page, Infertility Acceptability, to bring awareness to the world of infertility, because when I started going through treatments, there just was not a place for support, and so many people were just not aware of things to say to somebody going through it, and it hurt me so much that I decided I was going to rise above it and create a space where people can learn the sensitivity of dealing with either friends or family that are going through this process, because it's a horrible process and a long journey for a lot of people, and you need your friends and your family for support. So giving those extra tips on how to do that really, it struck me as something that I wanted to do, and I wanted to take, a lead in, and it's out of my nature for sure, because I'm not a very out there.
So this is exactly what I want to talk about. I mean, take us all back to, you got married and everything was rosy, and tell us what year that was also, and then what happened.
So we got married in 2015, and like a lot of couples, we were like, okay, we're not ready for kids right away. We just kind of met because with shidduchim, it's like that. You date for so short and you're engaged short, and then you get married, and it's like, oh, this is what it's like to live with another person.
Exactly.
And
exactly. It's so funny because I actually have a post ready to go up for tomorrow that talks actually gets right to the heart of that point, but we're not going there now, but keep going.
And that was in November of 2015. And then by the time the end of the summer rolled around, and I think around Sukkot time, we were asked to be kvater at a bris. We had asked to be kvater at a bris before that for my husband's cousin.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop you just for a second, because there are people in this audience who aren't necessarily religious. So I just want to explain a couple of things just very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what Sora Ruchel was talking about was in the Orthodox Jewish community, basically what happens is that people are so somebody's writing something here which I don't really understand, but it's all good. I think it might have been somebody who just might be a pocket text there.
Yeah.
So what happens is that people don't date just to date. People date to find their marriage partner. And what happens in those, so when you're dating for a short amount of time. And meaning once you find the person that you want to date, it doesn't usually drag on for years and years like in other parts of society. It's usually just a small window of time. And so you date, you find the person, you get married, and then all of a sudden you're just living with this person. And you're like, okay, like, now let's have a kid kind of thing. Okay. And so
we're strange people. I mean,
go ahead. You're about to say something. Go ahead.
I just said that we're strange people. That's all.
Yes, we are strange people. We're totally strange people. And then you were specifically talking about being a kfater at a bris. So a bris is the Jewish ritual ceremony where boys get circumcised at 8 days old. And there is there are different people who have different roles during that ceremony. And one of the roles of the ceremony is what's called a kfater, which is the person who brings the baby into the room to give to the person who's going to hold the baby during the procedure, during the ceremony. And so, and kfater, this role of bringing the baby in, is often associated with extra points that you might get sort of in the eyes of God, about that he might smile down on you a little bit more favorably in terms of if you were having difficulty having a child. So it's specifically given, this role of kfater is offered or given to someone who's having difficulty, generally speaking. Did I explain that right?
Yeah, that was good.
Okay.
I'm like thinking like, I was trying to think of words as you're explaining to like, okay, so turn on like not all religious mode. Got it.
Okay. I try to be all inclusive because I
right.
want to make sure that this space is as open and as embracing as possible. So go ahead.
Right. So around like September, October time, we had this role at this bris, and I got that baby fever, where you're like, I'm ready, let's do this. Backtrack a little, I also lost my father-in-law 2 months after we got married. So the whole process of getting into being ready to have children was pushed off more because, my husband was going through a really life-changing, situation, and it wouldn't have been right to bring a child into an emotionally challenged home at the time. Things needed to be, processed and worked on. And so we had already decided like, okay, we're not going to rush.
Sorry about the phone. Keep going. Welcome to normal life.
Yes. Like, is that a house line? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah. Like, who has house lines anymore? Well, I do seemingly. Okay, go ahead.
And then after that, we had started thinking about trying and deciding like we're going to start going off of the measures that we were on to prevent having a child. And around our first anniversary, we were completely in the world of trying, that we had officially been off any medications we were on and preventing, and we were no longer preventing. I also worked for a doctor who had an OBGYN in the office. So after trying for a few months, I think it was 4 months, we were like, okay, let's just get my hormones checked. What's the big deal,
Right. And you as by profession, which you mentioned before, you're a medical assistant. So you're in this world.
Exactly. So I'm in this world anyway. It's easy for me. I said, you know what? It's not such a big deal. Let's just get it checked out. I'm only trying for 4 months. It's not a long time. And I have advantage of it. I have it at my fingertips.
Right. And you weren't over the age of 35, so it didn't necessitate you going to get tested that early, but you figured, hey, why not? Like, I work here. Why not?
Right. After like I got my period the first time, it was never irregular, but it was also never regular, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
So, but that's like all women. Right. Exactly. So I was like, okay, like I might as well get it checked out. Why not? at least see if I'm ovulating,
Of
go from
course.
there. So I did, and some of my hormone levels came back irregular. And it seemed that I was, my LH levels, which is one of the ovulating hormones, was rising at like a speed that it shouldn't have been rising. And we like couldn't mark when I was ovulating because of that.
Okay.
So we went the whole PCOS road and got ultrasounds,
Yeah.
have cystic ovaries, my hormones are messed up, I have PCOS.
Okay.
So I said, you know what, after Pesach, I'm going to go see a actual fertility specialist, just a regular person. I had a friend that I know went through infertility, and she had used somebody and she got pregnant with them, and I wanted to just go see her. And I know that I knew that she did like good cost for, the
Right.
procedures and stuff like that. Like her
Got it.
self-pay was like 150 for the first visit, and then after that like $20 each time for blood
Oh,
draws.
that's amazing.
And I worked out with her that I could do my own blood draws, and I did them on myself and brought her
Wow.
the blood for
Wow.
free.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
yeah, it worked out. Medical assistant worked out.
There are
um,
perks.
yeah, so after a few rounds of the whole letrozole versus Clomid, is this working, ovulating, timing, injection to, you know, push the ovulation and HCG and all that stuff. After doing that for, I guess it was right after Pesach I went, and then in the end of the summer, we had had a chemical pregnancy after a few rounds of this letrozole. And I was on vacation and it ruined the last 3 days, but
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
at least like the 2 week wait was distracted by, the vacation, and like, let's just enjoy our time here and we'll figure it out. Got that negative pregnancy test the last day, and we were going into Shabbos at my husband's cousin's, and that was it. Like, we just tried to get through it and said, okay, we'll meet with the doctor when we come back and figure out our next steps.
Right.
At that point, we had already shelled out close to $1,000 on treatments, which doesn't seem like a lot after doing IVF. Seems very cheap, pennies.
Yes.
But it was our
But
own
still.
money.
Right.
Right. It was our own money, and it was part of our wedding savings, and we were just like, okay, let's talk to Bonei Olam, let's figure this out. So we did, and they had said, okay, so we have all your hormone workup, but has your husband ever been worked up? And he hadn't been, so we started with the blood work, and it came back abnormal. And his FSH was high, his testosterone was low. Things were just not in the right levels. And that was when we were told we need to get a semen analysis.
Okay,
And
I'm just going to stop you just for
you're
one
gonna
second.
right. So I was gonna say that was like what brought us into male factor infertility, which
Right.
I'll hand that back to you at this time.
No, I was going to say, I was actually just going to say, because it just, you mentioned it very quickly. Bonei Olam is one of the organizations,
Oh, you wanna
the
right.
just one of the Jewish fertility organizations which does a ton of different things, including diagnosing and the medical aspect. But in addition, it also helps to provide funding. I have a highlight about Bonei Olam on the page, so you can take a look at that and you can follow them and reach out to them.
But, you can also talk to me about it. I am very well versed in Bonei Olam and can answer anyone's questions.
Amazing. Okay, so go ahead. I'm going to let you continue first before I jump in more.
Okay, I just don't want to like give away everything before you get to like ask your questions that you want to ask.
I want you to continue, because I think the way it happened historically is the way it happened, and those are the pieces that are relevant. What I do want to ask as you're telling the story, and what I want you to keep in the back of your mind, is at what point did you want to start sharing this on social media, and what was the light bulb of like, hey, let's create this account, and because I need support. So I want you to continue telling your story, but then I want you to go back to that afterwards.
Okay. So this is already a year before I even started the account.
Okay.
We had, said we needed the semen analysis, and then everything was like jump in and rush because we wanted to start IVF as soon as possible. We had deadlines, and we had to get there with certain doctors, and Bonella wanted us to see the top doctors because of his situation.
Yep.
I'll tell you what my husband's diagnosis is at this point. Well, I had said we went for the semen analysis, and the first one came back 0. There was nothing in his sperm.
Wow.
In his sample. There was nothing there. There was no sperm, nothing. 0. And then that was a regular semen analysis. It was just done in that fertility doctor's office. Well, not in her office, but the way that there are different rules when you're a religious Jew of how you need to produce a sample. So we brought our sample in, and they ran the sample, and she knew our situation, so she actually prioritized it and got us the results that day, the unofficial results. And she said, you need to find an IVF doctor. This is not going to happen without IVF. And she recommended a whole bunch. And at that point, I was already in touch with Bonella, who had, allowed us to get the semen analysis at this place. They paid for it, which was really amazing because those are expensive.
Yep.
And they were like, you need to see this guy, Aaron Peretz.
Okay.
He's this really smart, I guess, scientist guy, lab guy, whatever it is.
Scientist, urologist. Yeah.
He's got magic eyes, basically.
Yes.
And they're like, he's had major success and spends hours on one specimen, and he'll be able to find something if it's there. The only problem is he's in Israel. Can you get to Israel? This was like mid-October, and we ended up going November 1st to Israel.
So we're talking mid-October 2016? Are we at 16 or 17 at this
17.
Point?
I think 17.
Okay.
Yes, 17 on the cusp of 18.
Okay.
And we went to Israel for 4 days. I couldn't miss work. Like, it was just too hard to miss work, and I had already missed so much from doing treatments and, coming late in the morning, and it's a job that you just can't be late to. Like, the phones start ringing at 9:00 and it's nonstop all day. Right. So you can't really be late. And a lot of times you're the only person at that front desk, so you can't miss work. It's very hard to find coverage.
I hear you.
Not so flexible. My husband's job, super flexible, which is why he stayed at his job for so long. He hated it. He hates it. He's finally leaving this year. We're very excited.
But the bottom line is, bottom line is that when somebody tells you your chance of having children is for you to go see this doctor in Israel, you get on everything. A plane and you go.
You figure out how to scrape together those dollars and you get there.
Right.
Like Baruch Hashem, we have family that is very supportive of us in our journey, and we have help, and we're very, very, very lucky. And I've spoken to people who are not as fortunate as us, and it's so hard. Like, I really get it. Like, it's really very hard. And there's no privacy anymore once you're, asking people for money, and it's just very hard.
Absolutely.
So
that's part of the hurdle of all of this, right? Like, if you don't independently have your own money or you don't have insurance that's covering, flying to Israel is a totally different piece, but
right.
If you
and last minute, flying last minute.
Right. Exactly. Flying last minute where you're not getting the deal upon the deal that you can, now nobody.
I don't even want to tell you how many days we booked our flights before our flight.
Right. I'm sure.
Let's just say I went straight from the mikvah to the plane, literally. Straight from the mikvah to the plane, because by the time they told us to go, we needed to go. Mikvah is a spiritual bath to cleanse yourself, in case anyone doesn't know, and you can't be with your husband or touch your husband until that point.
Right, because what I've talked a little bit about on the page is that for women who follow the ritual impurity laws, the laws state that from the time a woman gets her period until at the minimum 12 days afterwards, she's not allowed to be with her husband, and she can only then be with her husband after she dips in this ritual bath. And so the mikvah is the Hebrew name for the ritual bath. So straight from the mikvah onto the plane. Okay.
Like,
so
by the time we got to our hotel, my hair was still wet.
It's wild.
Yeah. And then we landed at like 6 something, and we needed to be at the lab at 8:30, I think, at night. And we needed to still provide a sample. So there was that too. Anyway, we dropped off our sample. We got back to our hotel room and we crashed. It was like midnight. We got like room service or something, paid way overpriced for deli sandwiches,
Yes.
like inhaled them and went to sleep. And
I am sure.
yeah. And the next morning we had our results already. He was great. He worked through the night. He literally sent us the results at like 4 a.m.,
Oh my
which means
goodness.
that from 8:30 to 4 a.m. he was working on our results.
Oh my goodness.
And
Amazing.
unfortunately came back completely zero. Everything zero. Nothing. Not one little cell. And we were devastated, but we were also in the holiest place on earth to have that news. And we were staying right outside the old city in Jerusalem, and we just took advantage. We went to every holy spot that you can possibly get to in 3 days, because at this point we were 3 days out and it was Thursday. We were pretty much just there for the weekend.
Yes.
And my husband has 5 siblings that we needed to also see while we were there.
Okay.
So, I mean, my feet were just really hurting by the time we got back on the plane.
I'm sure. Yeah. And so what did the doctor say? I mean, he did this extra in-depth procedure to see if there were any possible sperm, didn't find any, and then what?
So he told us that we're going to have to do something called TESI, which is a testicular extraction of the sperm directly from the testicle. And it's surgery. It's anesthesia, it's full surgery, and the likelihood is not, a few million sperm, it's a few.
Right.
And I had never heard of this procedure before. So of course, me being the major researcher that I am, sorry, I apologize for my friend down there. She likes to make funny emojis. Okay.
It's all good. It's all good. We're ignoring. It's all good.
Okay, good. So it was just like, what in the world are we getting into? My husband was having a really difficult time because, of course, he was putting the blame on himself. And he's a person in general that is so sensitive, and he was just so down. And the hardest part for me was to like not be resentful and not blame him, because it wasn't just him. It was us together. We're in this together. It's never just one person. You're a couple. You're in this together, no matter whose side the infertility is on.
Look, that's the piece. I think that, people, it's very, very, very common that people blame themselves when the infertility is their fault, when it's, it's right. One-sided, and it can be extremely devastating, and the person has these overwhelming feelings of guilt. Like this, it's so common, and it can happen on the men's side or on the woman's side. It doesn't, the feelings are exactly the same when you feel like, it's your fault, and you're like, well, if you just had married someone else, then you wouldn't be in this predicament. I mean, those are very common emotions that everybody goes through.
He used to say to me all the time, like, do you wish you were married to someone else? Like at his really low moments. And it would make me cry so much, because no, I would never, ever, ever want to be married to somebody else. This is our situation, and we're partners in this. We're not doing this on our own. This is us together. This is our life. I don't want to have a baby with anyone else.
Right.
I want to have a baby with the person that I love. That's who I want to have this baby with. And I don't want someone else's baby. I want my baby. Which brings me to a whole other subject of, being jealous of other people's babies, but that's a whole different topic.
Okay.
And a very real topic.
Absolutely. And I hope that we're going to have time to get to that a little bit, but
right at this point, probably
okay,
not.
So, yeah. So tell me.
Yeah, you want to ask me some questions, and yeah. So we're in November of 2017, and we need to get all of our, documents and procedures pre-surgery done by December. At this point, we're told by December. That's not a lot of time.
Wow.
That's not a lot of time to regulate me. That's not a lot of time to do everything. And then we got back to the States, and we're so overloaded with all this information. We were talking back and forth with my Boneolum counselor, who is fantastic and super supportive. And we were just like overwhelmed. And then found out that we can't do it in December because my husband's insurance won't cover the hospital bill at Cornell.
Oh gosh.
So then we had to apply for very expensive insurance for him. I luckily was still on my parents' insurance plan at the time. I was not 26 yet, so I was still on it. And I was covered with procedures and hospital bills and all that stuff. IVF is not covered by that plan, but at least like any of the anesthesia, the medications, at least some of them, the antibiotics are all covered. The ultrasounds, some of those were covered or partial coverage on those. And my husband had to pay either $5,000 for his, bed in the OR,
right,
or have this insurance and pay $500, which is a much better deal than, without insurance. So then at that point we were told, okay, so February is the next time we can do it. The surgery is only given 4 times a year. The doctor who did it is the guy who came up with it. So he's not practicing it as much, but we wanted him, and he only does it for 2 weeks, 4 times a year.
Wow.
So for 2 weeks straight, he's in that OR doing this procedure on as many people that they can get in. And we, were applied and we got in for the February, cycle, which is really the beginning of March. So it's the end of February, beginning of March. And I had to do all those, like the HSG, which is the sonogram that they put the saline in just to make sure that there's no obstructions. And in this period of time, while I was getting all these procedures, my fertility specialist, I used actually Dr. Dan Goldschlag of Cornell. He was fantastic.
He's amazing.
Yeah. He was like, you don't have PCOS. And your hormones are fine. You just have a high LH level. Like, you're still ovulating.
Wow.
So in the process of all of this, being told you don't have infertility, it doesn't really mean much when you are suffering male infertility at this point, when you don't have any sperm count at all. Like,
right.
I was like, oh, that's nice. Thanks.
Like, okay, thanks, but that doesn't help.
Do you want to tell me that you were joking about the sperm count? Because that would have been nicer.
Yeah.
And I was like, great. Now what? And he's like, your LH being high is actually beneficial to IVF, and it'll work really well with your follicles because you're so cystic. And I was like, yay, did something right.
Look, yeah, there has to be always a little piece of good news somewhere, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, that HSG thing was just really not painful. And when he did it, and he was like, oh, you don't have PCOS. And I was like, thank you. Thanks.
Amazing.
Great to know.
Amazing. Okay, so your husband went for this procedure.
Right. So that was all pre-procedure, and then he did the surgery, and you're expecting them to come out, and nobody warned me about the process of IVF as much as I researched. You don't feel it until you go through it. And the doctor came and told me, we found 11 sperm. That was what they found. 11.
Wow.
Wow. That's only one more finger than I have on my hands.
Right. Right. And also just for people's references, normally when you have a sperm sample, there are millions of sperm.
11 million.
Right. 11 million. Right. Not 11.
Yes. 11 single sperm. And really there were 12, but once they find one, they can't use that one because they find it with dye or something.
Right.
They found one.
They tag it with dye, and then they have to look for the other one. So yes.
Then they take the tissue to the lab, and then they sift through the tissue in a sterile environment rather than in the surgery environment, which is still sterile, but not sterile enough for putting sperm into an egg. Right. And that's where all the magic happens. And then the next day was my egg retrieval. So for anyone that's been through IVF, that uncomfortable feeling of being bloated the day before your retrieval. Try sitting in a folding chair for hours, because we were in the hospital from 6 a.m. to about 7:30 p.m.
Wow.
And most of that time I was sitting upright in a chair.
Oh gosh.
I mean, I didn't have any family with me, but I did meet another couple in the waiting room who, I'm telling you, it changed my life because they had been through it already one time, and I was able to sit with her, and she was able to talk to me and tell me what's going on and keep me calm. I was freaking out in that waiting room waiting to hear those results. Amazing. Anyway, my egg retrieval was the next day, and they found, I missed the number. It wasn't 11. It was 23. Sorry. It was 11.
Okay. Still not millions.
23. Right. No, not millions. It was 23. They retrieved the exact same number of eggs from me, 23 eggs.
Wow.
Which is a miracle because,
Right.
first of all, Tessie sperm does not freeze well. It freezes well. It doesn't thaw well.
Okay.
So if there were extra sperm, they would have been wasted because they wouldn't have worked. So it worked out amazingly that there were enough eggs of mine to put all those sperm into. And you get like calls certain days. So there's the first overnight that you get the call about fertilization, and they tell you how many fertilized overnight. So at that point, we had like 5 out of 23. And that was the first devastating news. And you're like, yes, there's 5 of them. That's like, by the time you get used to the processing that you have 5 out of that, you get to day 3. And we had 2 on day 3, which means we lost 3 from day 1 to day 3.
Right.
And then by day 5, so they had, on day 3, they did blood work for me. I have a thyroid condition. So if my thyroid levels weren't stable, they weren't going to transfer that embryo.
Right. They were going to freeze it, and they were going
to freeze it and wait till the next month.
Right.
My TSH level is supposed to be, for IVF, it's supposed to be in the 1 range. The highest is like the 1-2 range.
Yep.
With decimal points or whatever.
Yep.
Mine was 8.9, I think.
Oh gosh.
I'm autoimmune, so it's stress related. So all the stress from going through IVF and all those hormones that I was injecting into myself made the levels rise. And just a side point, I went to an endocrinologist that day to like get it under control. I didn't have one at the time. And I walked into this office that was recommended by my original fertility specialist. And I waited 2 hours to see the PA, not the doctor. And I sit down on the table and she says, why are you here? And I told her the whole situation. I told her about the IVF. I told her about the possibility of our cycle being canceled and treatments being canceled. And she was like, that sounds so stressful. Why don't you just adopt?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I've actually spoken about that before on my page. And it was, I got up after my appointment, went to the desk, and they're like, okay, so when are you coming back for your follow-up? I was like, I am never walking in this door again. This is a horrible place. And I walked out.
Oh my gosh.
I went to my car and I ugly cried for like an hour. But yeah. I just needed to throw that out there so that people can, laugh on my behalf a little bit, because it's kind of comical at this point.
Yes, now we can all laugh about this, but at the time, oh gosh.
At the time, horrible. That is not something you say to somebody, especially somebody that is still super hormonal from all those injections.
I was going to say, it is never appropriate at any point when someone shares with you how they're struggling to say, hey, why don't you just like give it all up and just adopt? Like it is, it's not, first of all, I should just say, like, it's never appropriate to say, like, just stop and like do something else, because it's obvious, it's clear that this person has invested, so much time, effort, energy, money, etc., in whatever process and procedures they're going through, and they just need support. So you don't offer any suggestions. But I also personally feel, and after having talked to Javi Brock a few weeks ago, who she spoke all about her adoption story. She's adopted 5 children. Wow. Adoption is not an easy process by any stretch of the imagination. And is also, like, it can be years and years and years.
It's a very long process.
Thousands and thousands of dollars. So to say,
and forget about that, you need to like be okay with that also.
Correct.
To grieve the fact that you're not ever having your own biological children.
Correct. So this notion of when people say, oh, just adopt, I find to be so.
And she knew it was my first IVF round. She knew that it was like the first time I was doing this. I was at the beginning of my journey. Like,
horrible.
It was horrible.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I'm past that now.
Right. Okay. So continuing on. So you get.
I'll fast forward a little bit. We got a report by the 5th day. It was only 1 embryo. He said it was a beautiful embryo and we're going to freeze it and try and transfer it next month. we opted out of the genetic testing. I just wanted to preference that because I know a lot of people do the PGD and the PGS testing.
Right. It's pre-implantation genetic testing, right?
Right, to just make sure that there's nothing wrong with the embryo. And our doctor told us that he was scared to risk taking a piece of the embryo, biopsying it, and because it was the only one we had, and we had done the genetic testing before, and we were both not carriers for the same things. Like, it was just a very low chance of our child having an issue, but the only thing we were nervous about is my husband's condition is a chromosomal issue. So we were scared that like we would pass it on, and our doctor assured us that there's a very small percentage that can happen.
Amazing.
Okay. And we only had one embryo, and at that point it didn't matter anymore. You know, right. Whatever this child is, we're going to love it.
Right.
And we ended up transferring the next month, which happened over Pesach. Like, all the monitoring happened over Pesach. I was doing blood work and almost had to go for an ultrasound on Pesach. And we already made plans to go to somebody for Pesach. So I had a courier service. Is that what it's called? The guy that comes to your house.
Yes.
To do blood work on Shabbos or Yom Tov.
Yes. And
it was in someone else's house, not family, a friend. So I had to tell them the whole process that was going on. And at that point, I wasn't so open about it because it was so new to me, and I was really in it, and a lot of anxiety, and it was just not something that I felt like I could talk about because nobody was. And that's you know, like the whole reason I started my page.
Right. And so did the page, so at what point, okay, so I want to just like skip, I want to, like,
right. So this is like April time, and I started the page in October. So you get an idea, we're in the same year that I started the page.
Okay.
And just this part that's coming up is a very big push for what I started the page and what I went through my journey. We transferred that one embryo, and I, of course, couldn't wait. So after 5 days, I tested at home. I did a home pregnancy test and became obsessive and probably ruined my eyesight trying to read those pregnancy tests. And went cross-eyed. But I was pregnant. I saw the line, and I was so excited. I was like overwhelmed with excitement. You know, I'm finally pregnant. I felt different. I looked different. Like, I was on the street, and one of my teachers, I worked at my high school at the time, and one of my teachers passed me by, and she's like, "Are you pregnant?" And I was like, "How do you know?" And she's like, "Wait, you are?" I was like 6 weeks pregnant. Like she just saw that I was so happy, and she's like, "It could only mean one thing because you've been moping around for the last year and a half. So It could only mean one thing." And I was so excited. And then I went for that first ultrasound, which I think it was my 6-week ultrasound or something like that, or 5 or 6 week ultrasound. Yep. And they saw a sac, very small. They did not yet see the fetal pole or the heartbeat. And then I went back the next week, and it hadn't grown from that week to the next week. And I went in 3 days later instead of a week later to see if they can find a heartbeat, because at this point I was probably about 7.5 weeks, and the doctor said we should at least see a fetal pole at this point, and they did not. And my life turned upside down in that exam room, and I was alone because my husband couldn't come to every appointment with me. And I just ugly cried on his table. And he was so great. He handed me tissues. He was sensitive. The nurse came and rubbed my back. And he told me that I need to go across the street tomorrow to get a invasive ultrasound with the high risk OB. And the next morning, my husband took off work. He came with me to the city, and we walked into the hospital. And I mean, you're walking into a high risk OB office. It's a regular OB office. There are women there that are pregnant beyond. Even some women in labor while they're there because they're coming to get checked out before being admitted. And we sat in that waiting room for like an hour and a half waiting. They put me on the exam table, and they did the ultrasound, and they took a lot of images because they don't want to tell you that you don't have a live fetus inside of you if you do, you know. They don't want to, you know, give you either a D&C or give you medically induced miscarriage. Like, they don't want to they don't want to do that if there's a possibility for it to be alive. So they took a lot of images. Then they told me not to get dressed, that the doctor's going to come in. The doctor came in, he took more images, and he told me that unfortunately I miscarried, and my baby was no longer living. And I wasn't crying at that point because I was just so emotionally numb. But then when I went into the bathroom to like clean up from the ultrasound and get dressed again, I was just like, I was sitting in the bathroom on the floor crying. And I didn't want to be hugged by my husband. I didn't want to be touched by anyone. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I needed that time to like grieve the loss, you know? Like I already thought about this child because I had thought about this child for so long. And then here it's no longer alive. Like it meant so much to me, that embryo, the one and only we had. And then I went back across the street. The doctor sat with us for a little while, even though he officially didn't have any appointments left. He was just finishing up paperwork, and he told us to come over. And he said there are some options. You can go for a DNC on Friday. This was Wednesday. He said you can go on Friday, or you can wait for nature to take its course, and, you know, we'll see how it goes. And if it does expel on its own, then you don't have to get the DNC. By that night, I already started lightly spotting. And the next day, I was a little crampy, but not terrible. I'd already scheduled for Friday for the DNC. And they were so nice there at it was like the Women's Surgery Center or whatever. And they were so sweet. Like they were like, okay, we're going to send you an Uber so you don't have to worry about car. There's no parking here, so we'll send you an Uber on us. If you need anything else, just let us know. Like they were so, so nice. That evening, I was shopping for Shabbos at the grocery store, and I started feeling like gushing. And I went to the bathroom there, which I never like to do because it's right behind the fish counter and it always smelled like fish. And I went in and my underwear was completely soaked with blood. Oh, God. And I was wearing a pad because I had been spotting. And I mean, at this point, I already was like really heavy bleeding to the point where if I go another 5 minutes, I'm going to start having blood running down my legs. And I called my husband and I said, you need to come pick me up. I was with my mom. I told my mom, I was like, this is my list. This is what I need for Shabbos. I need to go home now because I'm really bleeding. So I got home. I changed my pad. 10 minutes later, it was completely full. I was miscarrying. Right. I was cooking for Shabbos in the kitchen and making dinner and sad and quiet. And all of a sudden I got like the sharpest pain ever, like the most painful pain I've ever felt in my life, to the point that it brought me onto my knees on the floor. And I felt like something more than just blood was coming out. And I went to the bathroom and there was nothing there, just really heavy clots. And then I sat down, I changed my pad again and again and again. And I called my boss and I told him I was miscarrying. And I asked him, at what point do I need to go to the hospital because I'm losing too much blood? Like I was just so scared. And he said, if you're filling it up if by the time like you're getting off the toilet, the blood is just gushing, then you need to go, you're hemorrhaging and you have to come in. But try and stay home as long as you can. It's more comfortable there. You don't want to deal with this in the hospital. You want to deal with this in your own space. So we sat down to eat, and of course I barely have an appetite. And all of a sudden I felt something that felt like a clot but harder come out. And I went to the bathroom, and there on the pad was this embryo, whatever was left of it. And I had completely miscarried it. And like miraculously, the cramp stopped. The bleeding got very light. I went in that next day to just get checked out and to see if if there was any tissue left inside that they needed to evacuate. And they did an ultrasound, and they're like, you passed the whole thing on your own. Like, this is such a blessing because you didn't have to go through the trauma of a DNC. And you know, it's just like, you're so lucky. They kept saying, I'm so lucky that I just passed it on my own and I didn't have to deal with that emotional drama. But every time I get my period now, I'm traumatized. I'm brought back to that day, even though, Baruch Hashem, I have a beautiful child and I'm past that. And I did not remember the date of my miscarriage this past year because, Baruch Hashem, I was very blessed and, you know, was in a way different place. But every time I get my period, I think of that day. Right. that first period postpartum is a super heavy period, which no one told me about. And I thought I was miscarrying. And I had talked to a friend who said that she had the same thing. She thought that she was miscarrying that first period, that like somehow she ovulated, and we had said the same thing. Like, that's
Right.
There's no way that any more blood can come out like this. And of
Right.
course,
It's one
like
of
my
the
husband
things
was,
that, yeah, it's one of the things that we don't talk about, and people really don't talk about that first postpartum period, that it really is so heavy. And I can only
traumatizing.
imagine, as you're saying it, how traumatic that it reminded you of everything that you experienced before.
Right.
Yeah.
Really crazy. And my husband was so great. Like he had probably been dealing with his own mind of what was going on right now. Like, he failed to, create this child, and we went through so much money and so many procedures, and we just lost it. Like, within 2 hours, the whole process was 2 hours. From the starting of the gushing to the light bleeding, 2 hours. Not a lot of time. And after that, we were told that, we can't do this procedure for my husband for at least another 6 months. So that was a waiting game that we were looking forward to. And at that point, the doctor suggested that my husband had a double varicocele, which is the veins are larger and there's too much blood flow. And they figured that maybe if there was less blood flow, it wouldn't be so hot down there, and it might increase the chances of finding more sperm next time. So we did that procedure, and then we had to wait another 6 months from that procedure till when we can do it again. And then we had canceled the insurance already because I was pregnant, so we didn't need it for the next procedure. And we had to wait again till open enrollment in November, apply for insurance again, then wait till February. But that summer was a really tough summer. The post miscarriage, the knowing we can't do anything for a year, it was just really tough.
Right.
And I was watching, I think it was Chef Chaya at the time, was talking about egg retrievals for freezing your eggs as an older single. And I said, wow, she's talking about something that's so controversial out in public on Instagram. And I would talk to her, and I said, like, it was triggering to me for sure about the IVF process. And I was talking to her about it a lot, and she said, this is such a great platform where we can, be ourselves without having to deal with other people, which could be a good thing sometimes and a really bad thing sometimes.
Yep.
And, you have to figure out a way to balance it and to use it in the right way. And that was when I then talked to my friend Barry Fuchs, Bariana. She's a good friend of mine. And I was talking to her about possibly opening an account on Instagram and talking about infertility. And I'd asked her, like, what's five pieces of advice that you would give me? And I was talking to her, and she said, she's like, oh, like the other account that talks about infertility, Tricky to be Ricky, that's Ricky Zola, that's my friend. And she actually put us in touch, and we discussed her page, and I had started my page, and it was at the very beginning, and I was really just like sharing whatever thought came to my mind. And this was like October time. Within like a week, Ricky and I were best friends. And we discovered that our lives are parallel, and we're very much alike, and our husbands are also very good friends now. We've really become very, very good friends. And but yeah, I'm getting off topic there. But I started the page in October, and I was under strict rules not to talk about my husband's infertility because he wasn't comfortable with it.
Just to be clear, this is October of.
This is October 2018.
Okay.
I think, yeah, 18.
It sounds right. That's where I thought you were.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's where I am. And I had been talking to Ricky, and we, got together one night for pizza, and then the next day we went out and went to Topgolf, and we had our husbands meet, and they were hanging out together. And I guess it became, because they were so open with talking about it with each other, my husband just became a lot more open in general about talking about male factor infertility and about his issues, because it's very, it's very degrading for a man to find out that he doesn't produce sperm. Like, that's literally his job. You know, that's his job. He only has one job.
I was going to say, right. I mean, in this realm, he's not the one who's ovulating. He's not the one who, is carrying the baby. His
Right.
job.
I mean, he did have to do injections. He needed to do HCG injections to, build up his testosterone and all that stuff, which was more fun to give them to him than it was for him to give them to me. But it's so degrading for a man to go through that. And to find another man that he can, like, who understood it was like a huge thing. And for him he is like the most introverted introvert in the world. And for him to just go to like a stranger's house for Shabbos, or to just go hang out for the first time ever and not know the person, that's just like super out of the box for him. And then January time came around, and we were asked if we wanted to come on the 8-time shabbaton. 8-time's another organization that offers support and advice and many other services. And we were familiar with them because we needed somebody to watch over our sperm and our eggs when they were in the lab, to make sure that they weren't mixing it with anyone else's. Not that they would, but that's just part of the laws. And we were like, okay, but this shabbaton, what is it? And they were like, so it's totally Hasidish.
Right. Okay.
That's what they said.
So I would just say, so a shabbaton is basically like a weekend.
It was they call it a retreat.
Right. A retreat, like a weekend away. So that for
right.
couples who are experiencing infertility, I mean, a shabbaton is a general weekend away, but this specific organization does these weekends away for couples who are going through infertility.
Right. And their plan for the weekend is about inspiration and support, not so much discussing treatments and stuff like that. Like, if you want to be really private about it, you do not feel pressured at all on that whole weekend to talk about it. If you want to talk about it, you talk about it. Like, If you don't want to talk about it, you don't. Nobody asks anything. Everyone respects each other. And the best part is that the organization is completely run by a Hasidish family, and everyone, I mean, majority of the people and the couples there are all Hasidish, and there's very few Litvish,
which is a specific sect in Orthodoxy. Right. Okay, keep going.
And then there's like not a lot of people that are like on the level that we're on.
A different sect.
Yes. But it's just such a beautiful thing that everyone just gets along. Like, it's also completely separate. Like, everything is men's and everything is women's. Like, you're not with your spouse at all, pretty much, unless you're like in the same hotel room at night. That's pretty much the only time you have together. And I was shocked that my husband agreed to go. And he was probably shocked that he agreed to go. But we had such an amazing time. Like, I'm still on a high. And this was like 2 years ago. And it was just such a beautiful shabbaton. And at the end of the shabbaton, we had found a couple that literally same situation as us.
Wow.
Same doctors. Wow. Same timeline.
Wow.
Their procedure was 3 days before ours, and we were together through the whole thing. And it was just, basically my point is, you need support. You need people that get it, and you need people that are not going to judge you, and people that you can say crazy things like that you want to kill yourself without them taking you seriously, that you want to kill yourself, that they understand that you're just saying this because you are hurting so bad.
Totally. I mean, as we're winding down here, because I'm mindful of the clock.
Right.
Instagram will shut us off in another few minutes.
Right.
What have you found? I mean, we could talk for hours and hours about different pieces of your story, but what I want to focus on is, two things. One is, what have you found to be the benefits of getting out here and going public and talking about your story, you and your husband? What have you found from that perspective? And also, what besides, like, the finding the person, like finding the people who you could say, I want to kill myself, like, what other advice do you have to give to this audience for the people who are watching?
I find that starting my account has really, first of all, I've become friends with so many people in the same situation, and I found that support that I needed. And even though I'm not super active on the page anymore, I try to pop on and say at least that I'm still here. I'm still thinking of you. Like I have a list of who I daven for and pray for right before Shabbos every week when I light my candles. And I just have my Insta people. I write my Insta people, and I think about all the people on here that I've met. And even though I've never met them in person, I feel closer to them than I feel to people that I've known my whole life, because you go through this journey and you're both on the same page, and you feel a different type of support. I mean, I have
Absolutely.
my family and my friends are so supportive. They really are. And I really try and take everything with a grain of salt. And like if somebody says something that could be offensive, I try to just take it as they just don't know. And I can educate them. And I find that it gave me the courage from starting my page. It's given me the courage to be able to do that in person even. If somebody's giving a shear and they're saying like all the mommies and the daddies, I'll like message them after the shear and say like it's really not appropriate for you to say mommies and daddies because not everyone is a mommy and a daddy.
Amazing.
Yeah. And you had another question. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, no, I just advice that you would have for people in your situation who are going through any sort of struggle.
Go a little bit out of your comfort zone. The whole thing is out of your comfort zone. Go a little bit more out of your comfort zone and find somebody who you can share your struggles with, who will get it, and to try and be as open as possible, because the more you're open about something, the less of a stigma it is, and the less uncomfortable it is, and the less private it is. So it becomes something that is more comfortable to talk about, and something that becomes less weird to talk about.
Yep.
Like people always say to me, you said to me when you were, talking to me the other night, like, what's off limits? And I was like, nothing. I've become so open because I feel better when I'm open than when, I have to like be ultra sensitive. The more open about it, the less sensitive I am.
Yep. Yep.
And I find
yep.
that that's like the key to dealing with something that is a stigma with anything. I mean, my husband became more open and now he's willing to talk to people. He's willing to let me tell his story and talk about his testicles on Instagram Live. Like, he's fine with that.
You just reminded me, we
Yeah,
must talk about the name of the book that you...
Should I show it?
Yes, you have to, because I think it's so great. Okay, wait. So it's hard to
Is it backwards?
It's actually the mirror
It's
image,
inverted.
But the name of the book, which you haven't read it yet, but
I haven't read the whole thing yet. We've read pieces of it together.
Right.
And I think it's fantastic. It's called How to Make Love to a Plastic Cup. Right. And I think that it's hilarious if you get it.
Hilarious.
Because, yeah, it
totally
literally
hilarious.
speaks for itself.
Right.
I'm going to talk more about it, I think, on my page, the book specifically. So you can come there and check it out. And I'll let you, share it wherever you want.
Absolutely.
But it's so fantastic. And it's one of the only books we've found that discuss male factor infertility from like a comedy point of view, which if you're the type of person that deals with, loss and horrible things through comedy and make jokes and inappropriate stuff like that, which a lot of people in the infertility world do. A bunch of people are asking what my page is. It's Infertility Acceptability. It's linked on here. You can tag me wherever you're tagged. Right, you're tagged. I'm tagged everywhere on your advertisements for tonight. Anyway, it's such a fantastic book, and it's written from the man's point of view, and it's hilarious, and it'll keep you on your feet. And if you have a husband that is going through any type of male infertility, highly, highly recommend this book. I'm going to link it on my page as well, and I'll show you the link to the Amazon page or whatever it is, so that if you want it, you can go get it.
Perfect.
But I realize we don't have much time left.
I know. So I was just going to say, to wrap up, so Ruchel, thank you for sharing all of this. I mean, you've already shared so much on your own page, but for coming on here and sharing it again, even though it's you're not in the thick of it anymore, but it's something that you're also thinking about, because as you're thinking about expanding your family, and you and I talked a little bit about that too. So this subject is obviously very near and dear to your heart, and it's something that you're still going through. And I'm just grateful for you being here. I mean, you can see how active people were, and they were so engaged in really hearing your story and hearing you out. So thank you.
The first time I ever went live, I don't know if we have time, I might get cut off, but the first time I went live, nobody commented because everyone was scared to have their names shown. And there's just so many comments here, and I know a lot of these people and I recognize the names, and there are a lot of new ones, but I'm just so proud that like people are becoming more open about it,
Yes,
and if they're not, they don't have to be. Like there's no pressure
exactly.
for real.
Exactly.
And it's just such a
Exactly.
beautiful thing.
Exactly. Okay, everybody, this will be saved on IGTV and then moved over to YouTube. She is Infertility Acceptability. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
And
much for having me.
good night, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Bye bye.